You can do everything else right, eat well, exercise, manage your stress, and still sabotage your sexual health completely, just by not sleeping enough. Most men don't think of sleep as a health tool. They think of it as something that happens when they run out of things to do. But for your hormones, your blood vessels, and your brain, sleep isn't a passive state. It's an active, essential process. And when it gets cut short, the damage shows up in places you'd least expect. The Better Man podcast is produced by Kegel Men for informational and educational purposes only. This is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Every episode is reviewed by our medical team, but individual results may vary. Welcome back to the Better Man podcast. I'm Alex. Today we're talking about sleep, specifically what happens to your sexual health when you don't get enough of it. We're going to look at the hormonal side, the vascular side, and the psychological side. And by the end of this episode, you'll have a clear picture of why quality sleep might be the most underrated thing you can do for your sex life, and what to actually do about it. Let's start with testosterone, because this is where the connection becomes impossible to ignore. The majority of your daily testosterone is produced while you sleep. Specifically during the deep sleep stages, the slow wave and REM phases that make up the later half of the night. Testosterone levels rise during sleep and peak just before you wake up. That morning spike isn't random. It's your body completing a production cycle that depends entirely on uninterrupted sleep. Research published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that men who slept only 5 hours a night for just 1 week had testosterone levels 10 to 15% lower than when they were fully rested. That's a drop equivalent to aging 10 to 15 years, achieved in a single week of poor sleep. A study from the University of Chicago took this further. Researchers found that each additional hour of sleep was associated with a significant increase in testosterone the following morning. The effect was consistent and dose-dependent. More sleep, more testosterone. And it wasn't just the total amount of sleep that mattered. It was the quality. Disrupted sleep, even if the total hours looked adequate, failed to produce the same hormonal recovery. This matters because testosterone isn't just about libido, though it does play a direct role there. It also influences your energy, your mood, your mental sharpness, and your motivation. All the things that make sexual interest and function possible in the first place. The hormonal effects of sleep deprivation go beyond testosterone. 2 other hormones are deeply involved, and they work in opposite directions. The first is cortisol. When you're sleep deprived, your body treats it as a stress state. Cortisol levels rise, and cortisol is directly antagonistic to testosterone. The more of it in circulation, the more testosterone production is suppressed. This creates a compounding cycle. Poor sleep raises cortisol. Raised cortisol lowers testosterone. Lower testosterone weakens your ability to manage stress, and chronic stress makes sleep worse. The second is growth hormone. Like testosterone, the majority of your daily growth hormone is released during deep sleep, specifically in the first few hours after falling asleep. Growth hormone supports tissue repair, vascular health, and metabolic function. When you cut sleep short or sleep poorly, you cut short that release. Over time, that affects everything from recovery to cardiovascular health, both of which underpin sexual function. There's also the impact on insulin sensitivity. Sleep restriction has been shown to significantly impair insulin regulation, increasing the risk of insulin resistance. And as we touched on in the last episode, insulin resistance is one of the most powerful drivers of erectile dysfunction. The connection isn't theoretical. It runs through measurable biological pathways. Beyond hormones, sleep deprivation affects your vascular system directly, and that matters enormously for erectile function. During sleep, your blood pressure drops, Cardiologists call this the nocturnal dip, typically a 10 to 20% reduction in blood pressure compared to daytime levels. That nightly dip is protective. It gives your blood vessel walls a period of reduced stress, allowing them to repair and regenerate. Men who get insufficient or fragmented sleep lose that dip. Their blood pressure stays elevated for more of the night. Over time, this contributes to endothelial dysfunction, damage to the lining of the blood vessels that produces nitric oxide. And as we covered in the vascular episode, nitric oxide is the key signal that allows penile arteries to dilate and an erection to occur. Research published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that men with obstructive sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops during sleep, had significantly higher rates of erectile dysfunction than men without it. And crucially, treatment of the sleep apnea with CPAP therapy led to meaningful improvements in erectile function in a substantial proportion of those men. The connection runs directly through blood vessel health. Even without sleep apnea, chronic short sleep has been associated with higher inflammatory markers, oxidative stress, and arterial stiffness, all of which degrade vascular function over time. There's a psychological dimension to this too, and it's one that men often overlook. Sexual arousal and desire don't begin in the genitals. They begin in the brain, and the brain, after poor sleep, simply doesn't function the same way. Prefrontal cortex activity, the part of your brain responsible for mood regulation, decision-making, and reward processing, is significantly impaired by sleep deprivation. Your reward circuitry becomes less responsive. Things that would normally feel appealing feel flat. A study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found a direct dose-response relationship between sleep duration and sexual desire in both men and women. Each additional hour of sleep was associated with a 14% increase in the likelihood of engaging in sexual activity the next day. That's a substantial effect, and it came entirely from sleep. There's also the issue of emotional regulation. Poor sleep makes you more reactive, more irritable, less empathetic. The psychological safety and emotional connection that underpin desire, particularly in relationship contexts, erode quickly when either partner is chronically underslept. It's not just a physical problem, it's a relational one. So what does actually good sleep look like? And what can you do to protect it? The evidence points clearly to 7 to 9 hours as the optimal range for most adult men, not as a ceiling, as a target. Consistently sleeping under 6 hours dramatically increases the risk of hormonal disruption, metabolic dysfunction, and vascular damage. Sleep timing matters too. Your testosterone and growth hormone production are regulated by your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that aligns your biology with the light-dark cycle. Consistently going to bed and waking at the same time, even on weekends, keeps that clock calibrated. Irregular sleep schedules, shifting by more than an hour across the week, have been associated with metabolic and hormonal disruption independent of total sleep duration. Protecting your deep sleep specifically is worth focusing on. Alcohol is a common disruptor. It suppresses REM sleep and causes fragmentation in the second half of the night, even if it helps you fall asleep initially. Screen light in the hour before bed delays melatonin release and pushes your circadian clock later. And a room that's slightly cool, around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, supports the drop in core body temperature that initiates deep sleep stages. If you suspect you might have sleep apnea, particularly if you snore, wake unrefreshed, or feel excessively tired during the day, it's worth speaking to your doctor and getting a sleep study. Treating sleep apnea is one of the most effective interventions for erectile function available. And one more connection worth making: the pelvic floor. The same muscles that support erectile function also play a role in the quality of sleep for some men. Pelvic floor tension and dysfunction can contribute to nocturia, waking at night to urinate, which fragments sleep and disrupts those critical deep sleep stages. Kegel training through the Kegel Men app helps strengthen and coordinate these muscles, which can reduce urinary frequency at night and help protect the sleep architecture your hormones depend on. If there's one thing to take from this episode, it's this. Sleep is not the absence of activity. It's when your body does some of its most important work. Testosterone is built there. Blood vessels recover there. The brain resets there. Protecting your sleep is one of the most direct investments you can make in your sexual health. Next time on the Better Man podcast, we're looking at something that sits alongside sleep as a foundational influence on how you perform: what you eat. Episode 6. What you eat affects how you perform. I'm Alex. This is the Better Man podcast. See you next time.